Hey there guys, Noah here, welcome back to another Vanguard discussion video. Today we're going to be discussing my takes on what I think the next major restriction list is supposed to be for both standard and premium. Given the fact that we're getting a English presentation pretty soon, I think it's supposed to be on the 20-something, I don't remember exactly the date off the top of my head. I figure I go over some of the stuff that I feel like personally they should realistically hit, and kind of just what my takes are for both formats. As I feel like there needs to be a different approach for this restriction list in comparison to what JP got, mostly because when you ask people the two best decks in the format right now, it is Resale and Levi-Dross. Like, both of these are incredibly powerful, and so I think to start, I think the first biggest thing is making it so that way the Faded and Destined Kings cannot be put in the right deck. I think if you slow down the overall power level of these decks, it doesn't suddenly become too overbearing, while at the same time, you still have a very solid game plan in the case of Levi-Dross, without getting as much aggression as you normally would. This means that Levi-Dross is suddenly brought down to a more reasonable power level, without having to hit cards like Energaster or Skull, you know, so like, typically, that would be like your best bet, because both of these cards are a little problematic in the deck in the current variation of Levi-Dross. And so if you had to hit the deck outside of the ride deck restriction, it would either be one of these two, because Energaster allows you to check top 3 and then gains a back row attack off its own other skill, while Skull allows you to essentially gain a fuck ton of power on it and make the attacks way more difficult to actually deal with. It's just really annoying, and so you could actually possibly create another attack off that, you know. So like, all the other support cards revolving around Levi-Dross aren't as much of a problem. I think really just putting the base like Levi-Dross in the ride deck would be plenty to actually slow this down. And then for Resale, I admit the Faded King is a little broken, but I also think hitting Saragon as well. I think also hitting Saragon alongside Resale Vita is probably your best bet. Just mostly because like Saragon provides so much advantage and is kind of the main reason why this deck is able to consistently pop off when it does. And I think, especially given the fact that it's very easy to set up as early as you want and then just call them back after the fact, like, especially depending on the build too, because some people will run the order package as well with like Typhalt and Wisdom Order alongside this to actually just make it really annoying to stop. I think Saragon just creates way too many problems for this deck, especially when you're already generating so much advantage as it is. So I think hitting Saragon alongside of Resale would probably be the best bet. But let me know what you guys think. Outside of that, I really don't think there's too much else that you could realistically hit at this point. And it's just mostly simply because Soja Doji has run its course in the English meta at least, and I don't know entirely if there's really other decks out there that realistically need to be hit outside of those two in particular, but yeah, that's standard. Let's move on to Premium for a moment. So up next for Premium, so specifically there are a handful of decks that I feel like you probably do need to hit. First up, Nubatama in general. I think, like I stated before, assuming you don't throw the ride deck into Premium, I think hitting every single Crestmaker grade 1 is probably a necessary evil at this point, just because the power gains are absolutely absurd, and especially in the case of Shiranui, where there's really not a whole lot of interaction that you can do to stop it, enough to a point where even if you're playing something like Link Joker, you're kind of in struggle street against this deck, especially when they do Sukumura-Kon into Mizukaze. Like, at that point, it's just game over. So I do think Seizuri and all the ride deck that the Crest Makers need to get hit. I think Mizukaze is a lot of horse shit, if I'm being 100% honest. I think those two things for Nubatama specific need to be hit. If we're talking G-Zone wise, I think Sukumura-Kon needs to also go. I think Sukumura-Kon just needs to get the fuck out. Because the problem with Sukumura-Kon when combined with the Stride skill and, again, Mizukaze, is it leaves you with very little to no options to actually block this. And especially when you're already sitting at 4 to 5 damage, it's practically game over. That 20 plus card hand means nothing the moment this card hits the field. So I do think that, you know, banning Sugimura-kan outright would help a lot if you're not going to do anything else. I think, honestly, Sugimura-kan and Mizukaze both being hit would be enough, I feel like. So I think that's really my main, like, point of concern with Nubatama at this rate. And then for Neonectar, I think that Cyclone and Katrina need to be hit, because both of them alongside each other is just downright insane, right? Katrina, for those of you who are uninitiated, allows you to get plant tokens basically for free off her own skill, and then when combined with Cyclone, that's essentially plus 15 to all the plant tokens. So you're hitting 30k base columns if you do double plant tokens, 40 with Force Marker and other effects as well. So, like, it's just a struggle street at that point, and especially since how easily, you know, Katrina is splashable on every single Neonectar build, I think hitting it enough to a point to where the power columns off Katrina aren't as bad would be a good start. If you want to hit other stuff in the future, go ahead, but I don't think it's really necessary at that point. And then the only other clan that I see potentially having a problem with in the near future is actually Bermuda Triangle. And specifically, oh, what the hell is her name? Reindeer. I think the fact this card is still as good as it is after all these years is downright insane. I think the fact that you could combine this alongside Heltrina is just fucking ridiculous at this point. Especially when you thin the deck enough to a point where it just straight up doesn't matter what you do, right? Because what ends up happening a lot of times in the early game is that you'll sit there and just not give a shit. You'll go either Inesca for the additional, you know, gift markers. You go Laura just to gain a fuck ton of power on them. Or in a lot of cases, rather, you'll end up just going, where the fuck is she? Like, there's like a bajillion different things you could realistically do with this deck, and it's just downright insane, right? So, like, and then you also have Anj in conjunction to that, too, right? And I think that's really my main problem, too. Like, Anj alongside all this is just downright insane. But really, my main point of contention is not even that. It is, like, if you want to hit Reindeer, sure, but what the hell is that Trick or Treat grade 1? I want to look for it for a moment, because I think the Trick or Treat grade 1 that allows you to bounce a card back to hand, I think that's my biggest problem with the deck, personally. I think if you ask any Lyrical player, or any Bermuda Triangle player right now in Premium, that is the one card that is going to make a lot of people mad. Just because there's, like, literally no counterplay to stop it. You can't CB deny it. You can't, like, stop it. Here it is. Like, essentially what ends up happening is that you'll use this alongside Citron. Or even, there was another G-Guard in here, right? Let me see here, if I'm specifically looking for G-Guards. Because, yeah, Citron allows you to choose up to one grade 1 card from hand, call it to rear, and then plus 10. So, like, that's really annoying. And then I thought there was another G-Guard that allowed you to do something similar to that. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, yeah, and then potentially depending. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't this one. But, like, the general consensus is Citron plus that is just downright insane, right? Because really, there's not a whole lot of counterplay that can really come up. And Jesus Christ, I'm about to make a lot of Australians mad. Either that or you go Liana, and it has the exact same kind of effect, just probably with a little extra shield. So no matter what, it's kind of a weird, awkward scenario where it's just, there is no fucking winning with that shit. Like, honestly, this card probably should be hit. I think, truthfully, choice restricting alongside Citron and the other G-Guard would be enough. And then from there, it's kind of just a matter of whatever else you want to hit. Maybe hit Reindeer to make Highlander less consistent. Because there are probably a bunch of other Bermuda Triangle decks that you could possibly build at this point. Doesn't just have to be Highlander, but Reindeer's been the primary reason why the deck has been so consistent in recent years. So, I don't know. I think those are the 3 decks I personally hit. I know this would also mean Greydora would also be on the chopping block, but truth be told, I think Greydora is kind of a necessary evil at this point. If I want to pull her up real quick, since we've got a minute. Like, I think, truthfully, Greydora isn't bad. I think, as strange as it is, like, if you told me 3 years ago when Ruination Dragon was a thing, like, I probably would have said, yeah, chopping block, Greydora, get rid of this bitch. But I also do believe that she's kind of a necessary evil in this format to gatekeep a lot of decks that are really annoying in the format. And I mentioned it before in my tier list video. Essentially, you stop Granblue, Neonectar, and a bunch of other decks from just absolutely wreaking havoc on the format. And this is literally the ultimate gatekeep deck. Like, if your deck does not have an answer toward it, you are cooked. That's the reason why, admittedly, at BCS Philly, I could not in good faith bring Luard in because of this matchup. Like, straight up. Like, even if I just wanted to fuck around with Luard for a bit, I realistically wouldn't be able to for very long, because if I faced a single Greydora, I was dead on the spot. So, like, I think no matter what, it's kind of a necessary evil, because other random decks like that can just pop up out of nowhere. And then the only other clan that I can potentially see them hitting in the near future would probably be... where are we? But truth be told, I think outside of legit those few, and then Granblue, right? Granblue would be my other massive point of contention, right? Because if I'm being 100% honest, the only other thing that would have to probably be hit is Negrelily and Beatrice, right? Those two cards, if you choice restrict them, they can't do their Cannoneer combo. If you do that, that prevents you from being able to recycle a bunch of different shit with Greed Shade, right? Just out of nowhere. And so I know it would significantly hurt the deck enough to a point where it'd probably fall off a bit, at least maybe until someone cracked the code with the Stride deck set. But I think it would be kind of a necessary evil at this point, given how strong, you know, Granblue already is, and them having access to a Denial Griffin-esque play. Kind of a bit unfair if I'm being 100% honest. It's kind of the reason why I'm kind of just not playing the deck currently. I think it's a little kind of bullshit, especially when you, like, burn through your CB, right? And then you have Grenache. Like, the fact that you burn through most of your CB, and then you have Grenache to get it all back, and then when combined with Night Rose's GB2 skill, like, you're essentially getting all your counterblast back, but basically nothing, right? And then if that's not really enough, because keep in mind, the only other decent card that can actually somewhat do a similar effect is King Serpent. Because it's like, when placement drops, Soul Charge 1, Counter Charge 1. So it refuels your soul, but also at the same time allowing you to just also counter charge as well. It's just, I think regardless, really my main concern would be hit Grenache, probably ban it at this rate, and then hit Beatrice and Negrelily. Because once you hit those two cards in particular, the rest of the deck kind of falls apart, enough to a point where it's like at least somewhat fair and balanced. It actually makes Bartholomew a lot more reasonable at that point. Because if you survive their initial push turn with, like, let's say, Big Obadiah plus Skull Dragon combo, you at least have outs, right? And I think that's really the big difference maker here. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section about all this. I kind of just wanted to do a quick little, like, look at the entire format. There are probably a few cards and decks that I would probably hit as well, just off my own personal chopping block, but I want to hear your takes as well. But until next time, this is Noah, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye, everyone.
You're the one that makes me feel so high.